most people do, which is abandon it.
Hey Steph, we got a paper jam.
Oh my God.
Poor Steph.
She took her first hike of over a mile yesterday.
Oh,
Wow.
fantastic.
That's progress.
Yep.
Nice. So the leg's getting back in shape, huh?
What's that?
The leg is getting back in shape?
Oh, yeah. Doing well.
All right.
We're ready to go?
Yep.
I'm
Okay.
ready. Is she set with the
Yep.
television?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
If it's on, it's good to
Okay.
go. All right, good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the North Branford Conservation and Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency on Wednesday, January 22nd, 2020 at approximately 6:35 p.m. And first thing I'd like to do is a roll call of everyone seated here this evening. To my left, we have regular members Frank Bergano and Ashley Joyner. And to my right, we have Recording Secretary Mary Caruso and Town Planner and Wetlands Administrator Carrie Duquez. I'm Steve Scavell. I'll be acting as chairman for this meeting. Oh, sorry, and we also have member members Jerry Fishback, sorry. I'm looking at the back of the piece, sorry, Jerry, apologize.
We need to put a picture.
I gotta remember
I
that.
know, we need to put his
I
picture
know,
right
it's
here
just
so we
'cause
can
it-
tell.
out of sight, out of mind, so I apologize. You're obviously an essential
Bill
member of
coming
this
too?
agency.
I believe so, but yes.
Oh, we can start then.
Yes.
Oh,
No.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, sure.
We'll move this one over.
So we'll move on to minutes. There are minutes from December 11th, 2019, and the special meeting on December 16th, 2019. And does anyone here have a motion or any recommended for revisions or?
Frank has a revision.
Well, I think it's been taken care of now.
Okay. Oh, the spelling of the name.
Yeah.
that's,
So-
As
So-
long as we get our cookies.
Cookies,
you know
yeah.
what, we're okay with it. That's-
Jerry, you want a
that's enough.
cookie?
Jerry doesn't get a cookie.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as, the minutes of December 11th and December special minutes, meeting of December 16th.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, aye, okay. Can you hear me okay, Jerry?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, good. All right, they're approved. So we're gonna move on to item 4 of old business, which would be item A, cease and desist at 1071 Middletown Avenue for illegal filling and dumping of material within the 100-foot upland review area of a wetlands.
Okay, so this is at 1071 Middletown Avenue. It's regarding Maneri Landscaping. I did meet with them since our last meeting, and they have retained Bennett and Smilis Associates. So I'm just going to pass this down.
And, well, I'm sorry,
Yeah, who
Bennett's-
are they?
Sorry,
are
they
an
are
attorney?
a land surveyor.
Oh, a land surveyor.
That will help them with their filling and dumping?
So, I'll just read this into the record so Jerry can see it as, or listen to it as well. Jerry, can you hear me okay?
I hear you just fine,
Probably
thank
say
you.
it
Okay.
on the spot.
So, dear Ms. Duquez, this letter shall serve as notification and scope of services for work to be prepared by Bennett and Smilis Associates, Inc. Please note the following. Our firm has been engaged by Maneri Landscaping LLC to prepare plans for mitigation of existing violations and seek permits for expansion of use on the above referenced site. Our surveyors are on site today locating the existing brook, building, paved areas, stockpiles, and areas disturbed by placement of stockpiles. It is our understanding Maneri Landscaping intends to clean up the site and restore disturbed areas in order to obtain wetlands and zoning permits. It is also our understanding Maneri Landscaping intends to lease spaces on the site for truck parking. The plans we prepare will be suitable for submission to both the Wetlands Commission and Planning and Zoning Commission for wetland and zoning permits. Our goal is to submit by February 14th, 2020 for receipt by the Wetlands Commission on February 26, 2020. Applications to Planning and Zoning will be submitted after our first Wetland Commission meeting on February 26, 2020 meeting. Please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions or need any additional information. Sincerely, Michael Bennett. So I did take photos of the property when I was out there. They have removed the trash, so just to remind you, this is from November 13th, what the site had looked like. And then here's January 10th. So they've removed the largest pile of trash. There's still large stockpiles of stumps and soil and tree trunks.
Carrie, was that fence approved previously?
I don't believe so, no.
But the fence is not, the fence doesn't go against the river, the fence goes along the front of the property.
It's perpendicular.
To the building.
Right,
yeah.
to the river, to the stream.
Yeah.
So it may be within the 100-foot upland
Part of it
review
might
area.
be, yeah.
So that's part of the work that Smilis,
Oh, for part of that.
Bennett and Smilis will do. The other thing just to note is that I think what really got their attention, unfortunately it wasn't us, but it was DEEP. So they sent them a notice of violation at the beginning of January, threatening to send them penalties of $25,000 per day.
Is that because?
Oh, that's so much more than ours. Why can't we do that too?
Was that
So-
was that because of our action, the DEP?
Yeah.
No, it was separate. So
Oh, no, thank you.
So they were cited because they were seen as a processing facility without the proper permits.
May I ask another question
Yes.
too? Are they gonna have a soil scientist? I mean, are they just making this determination by, here's the riverbank? Or are they
Right.
gonna get a soil scientist in there to determine where exactly the wetlands?
What's Bennett doing?
Yeah, because it
I will
doesn't
confirm that.
say that.
Right. I will make sure that they will flag the wetlands. Okay. So that's really just the update for,
Does the cease and desist need to continue?
yes, I would recommend that you keep that in place.
Do we need a motion to do that, continue that, or? I don't know.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it can't hurt just to,
Yeah, until we get to see something.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, I move to continue the cease and desist at 1071 Middletown Avenue for illegal filling and dumping of material within the 100-foot upland review area of a wetland.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Cease and desist will remain. Okay, we're gonna move on to number 5, new business. Item A, discussion of possible text amendment to wetland regs regarding submittal requirements prior to accepting an application or holding a public hearing.
Okay, so this was discussed at a meeting at least maybe a month or two ago, and even earlier than that. So the idea initially came from a resident, Greg Sharp, who had looked at Branford's regulations and how they operate. So what he is recommending is that the commission consider adding a text amendment to our regulations, which would state something along the lines of the following. If a public hearing is to be held on any application for a permit, all substantive documentary evidence as determined by the agency shall be filed with the agency and be available for public inspection no less than 5 business days prior to the day of the hearing or any reconvening thereof. If no public hearing is required, the agency requests that documents be submitted for review 3 days before the meeting. So
Sounds reasonable.
I'll pass this down and you can just think about it and we can put it on a future agenda, but this came out of,
Makes perfect sense.
the filings at 363 Totucket, because he was really involved in that, and he felt like they were filing their changes, like the day of the meeting, day before the hearing.
So what's the process for putting this in?
So for a text amendment, we would have to hold a public hearing. We would have to have 2 legal notices in the newspaper prior to the public hearing. And then we could add it maybe to our regulations. I've looked at our regulations to see where it might fit, and I can copy the whole section for you, but I think it would fit under application requirements.
Yeah, that makes, I have it here already.
Okay, so I'm suggesting it would go as 7.8A. So just to give you some context, Again, section 7 is application requirements.
It says 10 copies of all application materials shall be submitted, right?
Right, so 7.8, so here's 7, application requirements. 7.8, right, says 10 copies of all application materials shall be submitted to comprise a complete application unless an applicant is otherwise directed in writing by the agency. So then following that would be something along the lines of, you know, that any material has to be submitted 5 days prior to a public hearing, if the public hearing is to be held, or 3 days prior to the meeting.
You wouldn't give it its own number, like 7 point, we would change the other numbers? or
We
not?
could, right, so we could do that, insert it, and then just shift everything down. I didn't think that it would fit at the end. I thought it
No.
would kind of get
No,
lost.
it fits better there because the next one is
Yeah.
any changes. So-
Right.
It goes.
Right, the other place that I thought it could possibly fit is, so 7.6 talks about at the discretion of the agency or its agent, or when the proposed activity involves a significant impact, that talks about having a public hearing, but there's already an A through
Mhm.
H
I'd rather like to see it as its own
owned
number.
separate, and then renumber.
Yeah, if that's okay. I don't know
I
if
think that's fine.
What about other changes? I mean,
Yeah, 'cause we
since,
wanted to.
because I know, I have notes on this, cause we did this, I'm assuming I have the current copy, last time was 2015.
Yes.
So, I mean, I like to put in there about the need of the signs that we've talked about, the conservation and wetland signs,
Mhm.
Okay.
about dumping on grass. Then we had said we were going to look at the fees, and then also violations after the fact.
Right.
We were gonna address violations after the fact.
Okay.
You know, for if they go ahead and do something and then get caught.
Yeah, cause that's come up numerous times,
Yep.
and it's just a hand slap and away we go,
So can
and
we combine all of these into public hearings so that way we can address all of them at once?
if you don't
Yep.
mind,
Say, if we
that's,
do it, no, it makes sense to do it all in one
Right.
shot, so if you're gonna have a hearing, we can cover all this, absolutely.
yeah, because I think it's important, you know, really like, I mean, we really need to see how the fees have changed, and, I mean, this has been 5 years since we adjusted the fees. I mean, I'm not a proponent of going crazy and raising fees, but we should, again, look at, like we did before, I think we based our
Yeah.
fees on what Branford did, if I remember
Yes.
right.
Mhm.
Right.
To see what the other towns are doing, and, you know,
Well, I think
So-
it's eventually we need to be a little harsher, like you said, for people that willfully violate, and then come after the fact. I think
Mhm.
those we should target. I'm not, legitimate application or anything. We should mirror, we should see what other town, but I'm with you in beefing up the ones where people come and do obvious,
yeah.
violations, and they don't seem to get away with.
And the signs, we should have a cost for the signs. So in other
Yep.
words, if signs are required, it's gonna cost the applicant X dollars per sign.
If we
'Cause the
require
to-
50 signs, then
Yeah.
they should know upfront
Yeah.
the
Yes.
fee. That's a
Be-
good idea.
Yeah, because the
Absolutely.
town shouldn't bear the cost of the post and the signs. That should be borne by the,
Can I expand your dumping on grass to
Sure.
dumping on grass and wetlands?
sure, that's what I meant.
Or the upland review area as well?
So what if we put this on a agenda for a later date, whether
Sure.
it's February or March? But in the meantime, could you maybe send me some language
Oh, all right.
because if you have the notes,
I just have scribbles,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
type up and send them.
because
Sure.
I'm just,
But yeah, I'll try to think of something and send it to you.
I can do the signs one, and obviously we can all look at the fees. The dumping of the grass clippings, do you just mean, I'm not sure where that would,
I think it's dumping of any kind, the wetland and upland review areas.
okay,
Yeah,
as
'cause
a,
it is a violation,
Yeah.
because I don't think it's spelled out.
okay, I'll look in here.
And then after the fact, I honestly don't know what to say for the after the fact.
But we might be able to find something in state or other towns.
Yeah.
That would be used as a guide.
Okay. Okay, I can draft those or look at information
And
for
let
the
me
next
know what I
meeting.
can do to help.
Okay,
'Cause
I'll
be
bounce
hap-
it off of you maybe
I'd be
first.
I'd be happy to do it.
Okay, that'd be great. All right, that's all I had for that.
Okay, we'll move on to item 6, which Enforcement Officer's Report. Item A, update on Farm River Watershed Project.
So that project is moving forward. It's being spearheaded by Chris Sullivan of the Conservation Resource Network, I believe is the title, but, so the next meeting is January 29th at 1 PM here, so you're all invited. I can just take notes, if, you know, and report back at our next meeting, but that study's underway, so that's good.
Good.
So then B, these are applications that I've reviewed that are within the 100-foot upland review area, but are minor in nature. So the first is number 2019-22. This is at 246 Reeds Gap Road. There is a site plan for a new water system pump house. So this is at Northford Glen Condo Association off of Reeds Gap Road. Currently, their pump house is actually on private property, on the adjacent property. Jerry obviously can't see this, but. And their proposal is to move it onto their property for a variety of reasons, so that they have control, so they have better access. So it is within 100 feet of the wetlands, which is here, but their proposal is to just trench, so it's temporary in nature. Here's Reeds Gap Road. This is where the well house is located now, pump house, and they want to move it here. So it's in an existing grass area outside of the tree line.
Right, so they want it here.
Yes.
No, I wonder how would that happen, somebody else's
Yeah,
property.
how
Yeah,
Put
how
on
they can
private
approve it, I
property.
was gonna say, you would think there'd be some legal, issues, but not our problem.
Unless they sold that property after they.
Probably.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
but it's really, it's right next to the house, it's just, wow, bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
Okay.
probably a very good thing. Jerry, just to show you, can you see,
I'm gonna sit in your chair, I'm sorry.
you see what I'm showing you, sir?
I did, yeah.
The issue is there's a pump house here, and they wanna move it, it's a condominium complex to get it out, somehow wound up on private property, so it was one of the things that Kerry had approved. So we.
Yeah, no, and that's a good thing. I'm just curious though, why are they looking for a 24 by 24 foot garage for the pump house?
I think it's
Am I
just
missing something here?
to house the equipment,
What size is
so
it
they
now?
so they can maintain it.
What size is it now, Terry? Because that's not 24 by 24. It might be 24 by 10, 12.
The
maybe
writing's
more
way
space,
too
maybe
small.
Maybe it's pretty cramped in the other one.
Maybe they want to put lawnmowers and stuff in there too.
Well, if that's in the wetlands, then that needs.
But I understand
more
having an area around to do
So what
maintenance.
actually is a pump house?
Oh, that's to pressurize the water, typically.
So-
Where I live, we have a pump house.
Yeah.
Okay, is it though, well water or?
I'm assuming
Yes.
it's well
And it's
water,
for a
yeah.
condo
And it's
complex.
yeah, it's,
Should be a large
and it's,
aquifer well.
and it's an apartment or condominium complex, so they need to have pressure for it.
All right, yeah, so it's gonna be built in such a way that it
And the-
doesn't freeze and everything.
Yeah, and they
functions. All right.
probably the reason for the extra space is they're probably gonna put in a generator when the power goes off, so they have water.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm assuming,
That would make sense, yeah.
yeah,
But it
and you need
doesn't say
space
why
for
they
that.
want to expand it?
No. No, and I can't read the existing dimensions. It's way too small.
But, I mean, I don't see any downside on the wetland, if it's done properly.
Well, and the Regional Water Authority reviewed the application as well, and they did not have any issue with it.
Yeah, I don't have any
No,
issue.
it's something that I guess needs to be done, so.
Okay.
Okay, so then the next item is application 2020-1. It's for site plan, which includes regrading and maintenance of an existing gravel parking area within 100 feet of a wetlands at 2110 Foxen Road. This is Dependable Hydraulics. So they're right on Route 80.
Oh, okay.
They have an existing industrial building, zoned industrial. They marked on there where they'd like to regrade, so it's currently just a large pothole in their
Right.
gravel parking lot.
It's got
It
destroyed
fills
by
up all the
trucking.
time, so they need to excavate out the existing material to put in material that will be better draining.
And it's an already existing parking lot.
Yes.
Right.
Is this next
Yes.
It's that, it's, remember, right,
Yes.
right there.
Isn't that the
yeah.
property where we had them put, trees years ago?
Yep.
Yeah.
Could be, yeah.
So they're not doing anything behind that red line, so, okay, I understand.
Yeah, it needs to be done.
And then the last one that I've reviewed is at 449 Forest Road. It's application 2019-18. It's a site plan for an addition to an existing house. So again, on Forest Road, this is in front of Diglio's greenhouses. It's an older home, and they're proposing to add on
They
to
tore
the
down part of
northern.
it already,
Okay.
This house, I assume, right?
so they're probably just building up what they tore down.
Well, they're proposing an addition to the north. So there's an existing stream channel here, and they're proposing to go in this direction.
It looks like lawn, is that lawn?
And I know that it's all established lawn. They have cut down a few of these trees within the area.
Where they're gonna go, right?
So they're proposing, it's actually 32 feet wide. I think on the application it originally said 30 feet wide, but the house is 32, so they're not going any wider than the house, but then they're going out 30 feet. And the stream is actually much lower in topography.
So that'll bring it out to about here,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the stream.
Yes, the dark area. Probably a good 5 to 6 feet down.
I assume it's gonna be done on slab, it's not gonna be a kind of excavated
Correct,
basement. Oh, okay.
yes.
Okay.
So, and they would have to put up silt fence, obviously, and this was also reviewed by Regional Water.
Oh,
And
wait,
East
so
Shore
this-
is involved. So DeFrancisco's is here,
Right,
the farm stand is right here.
so this is the last house before the stream, and the stream goes under down to the
Yes.
Farm River.
Yes.
That's really close to the stream. And this stream is a very active stream. It's constantly running. And this area right here floods all the time in heavy rain. So the whole road, people have to go into this lane to get around. This might be something we wanna look at. Because building off of this will also redirect that water onto the road again. And this is a flooded area, that happens all the time, and I mean, major, like, you can't drive through it, you have to go around the puddle, that's how deep
Really?
the water gets on the road. I don't know, Carrie, I think this one might
Yeah,
be big enough
it's
that
up
we
to
have
you
to see
guys.
it.
You can at least look at it.
Because this is an active stream, this is the one that goes behind my house, that's why I know. I think this one we need
Okay.
to look at.
All right.
Okay.
So I'll have them come to the February meeting.
We might actually want to go look at it too, because that area floods constantly with heavy rain, any heavy rain. So like anytime, you know, the Farm River rises at all, that area is flooded all the time. Okay,
Okay.
See, I'm gonna go by there.
yeah, cause it's
I
past
go the
village,
other way.
right?
Yeah.
Like it's just past it.
Okay, then, I can go on to number
Yep.
7. Oh, okay. So now we're gonna move on to number 7, other business. Item A, receipt of application IWWA 2020-2, site plan for construction of an active adult residential community with construction activities located within wetland and water courses and within the 100-foot upland review area of inland wetland areas at 50 Fowler Road. Owner applicant Munger Brook Associates LLC.
So I did receive, which I've distributed to each of you, the application for 50 Fowler Road. It also mentions 239 Notch Hill Road and 245 Notch Hill Road. So there's the wetlands application, which has been completed and filled out, along with the narrative, which is attached. There's various reports from soil resource consultants, so I'll just, I'll list these, Mary, and then I can just have them as exhibits, I guess. But, so we have the application, we have wetland and upland review zone planting details area B, which is, revised through January 6th. And we have a report, wetlands functions and values assessment, also dated January 6th. Upland review zone activities from soil resource consultants, January 6th, 2020. Stormwater wetland detention basins planting details, January 6th, 2020, Notch Hill Village. Wetland creation plan and planting details, revised through January 6th, 2020. And then we have the set of plans from Summerhill Civil Engineering Associates. The one part of this that I did not see in here was the landscaping plan, which is sheets 13 through 20. And we do have the drainage report, the stormwater management report dated January 1st. Which I think there's some appendix that were in the original one from the last application that are not in here.
So does the town have all the materials required for this application before we proceed? I have two questions. Does the town have everything that they need? Because in the past, the last time we had this, it was a struggle getting all the information. And I really don't want to hear this if you don't have all the information. And number two, I mean, we got a lot tonight, and I really don't want to listen to an hour or 2 hour presentation again. I'd like to look at this first, but my question is, this committee asks for a lot of specific changes, homes to be removed, et cetera. If that's not done in this package, it's not worth listening to. So do we know, as all those houses that we asked to be removed, have they been removed? Have everything that we spelled out at our meetings, has that been done? Because if the answer is no to any one of them, I think we don't listen to this tonight until they come back with what we asked them to do. That's my recommendation.
So, oh,
Go ahead, Frank.
Jerry.
I'm Jerry.
Well, I mean, I had a lot to say at that last meeting, and I felt that the particular lots that were of concern to me, some of them were of more concern than others, but I put them out thinking that they were going to be at most a point of negotiation, and I did not think that what I had said should be necessarily carved in granite. I felt that I was going to give Mike Ott and David Lord the opportunity to show me why this should not be of a great concern. So I was going to be willing to listen to those arguments, but before I do hear, I mean, I don't want to hear a 2 hour presentation either at this point. What I really would like to know is, how does this new plan differ from what we already, from the old plan?
Right, and
So-
so you made a valid point, a point in negotiation. So if there aren't at least a significant number of those houses removed, right, or some attempt to remove those houses, then that isn't, we're not at a negotiating point.
So, I'm sorry to
Right.
interrupt, but I have to stop everyone because I think it's key for the commission. This is a unique situation. It's absolutely imperative that you look at this as a new application. So you
Okay,
have
so
to
then-
erase from your mind.
That's fine. If it's a new application,
You-
is the application complete?
Right, so hold on, but just, so that's another question that I'll address, but you can't go into this with any predetermined thoughts.
But that's hard, because we
It
spent,
is hard.
we spent countless hours
It is hard.
doing this.
But you
Yeah.
you can't, you have to give them the benefit of the doubt, or it's already a tainted application.
That's fine.
Okay.
Absolutely fine. But is the application complete?
Complete.
That's my
So-
most concern about the.
Because if
So
it's
I-
not
if
If you're
complete, I don't
missing
wanna hear
pages
it.
13 through 20 and part of the appendix, it's not complete.
Right, so those are the parts that I did not see unless, that are missing.
May I?
Sure, you can identify yourself for the record, sir, and proceed.
Thank you. Good evening. Joe Porto, practice law with Porto, Parisi, and Caldwell. Our office is in Hamden and represent the applicant, Mungerbrook Associates, LLC. So, the plan for this evening was to not put on a 2-hour presentation, maybe something in the neighborhood of 30 seconds to a minute, to just simply talk about the project and to have this commission, number one, hopefully accept the project. Number two, make a finding that there is a significant activity. Number three, discuss the need or hopefully waive the need for a site walk. And then number four, set a date for a public hearing, at which time we would address the concerns that you brought up, and to address what Mr. Fishbeck, hello by way of Skype if you can see me, had brought up as well. So the one issue that appears to be on the table presently is whether or not the application is complete. So let me speak to that for 1 second. Everything from our perspective is in minus the landscaping plan, okay? We can have that done very quickly. We've had a meeting with staff in late December. A discussion was had with regard to some of the topics we discussed at the last hearing, which I'm not going to get into. We're going to discuss that at the next public hearing for the benefit of the commission and the public. And we could have that done in 2 staff in short order. And by short order, I would say no more than a week. Yes. And I would ask that, so that we can keep the project moving, that the commission allow us to move forward to accept the application with my representation, that we will have a landscaping plan submitted. It will depict the topics that we discussed with staff, and I believe the commission will recognize a lot of it from conversations we've had in the past. And so we would like to move forward on that basis. I can give my 2-second overview of the project. I know the commission's familiar with it for the benefit of a record and creating a new record for a new application. I can go over it very quickly, I promise.
Well, I have a question. I have a question for Carrie, because I'm back to where you talked about before.
Yeah.
It's very difficult, and I know this is recorded, it's very difficult for me to hear this without erasing the prior knowledge and the understanding that we made specific requests for homes not being in the wetlands. And I don't know, to me, if we're just gonna go back through the whole thing again, if those changes were not incorporated into this up front. I understand it's a new application, but I would think that as a good faith, they would bring us, based on what we did in the old application, seeing they wanted a new application, in good faith, they would come in to us with an application that made positive changes. And if those positive changes aren't there, we're just gonna rehash everything again. And I don't wanna spend my time doing that, because I'm a volunteer. I'm spending my time on this. I don't wanna sit through this again and again and go over the same arguments that you're in the wetlands. And I understand it's a new application, I'm sorry, but there needs to be a good faith effort on your part to show that you've made progress. I mean, so I think that's the one question I would ask tonight is, what changes did you make that addressed all the concerns that were raised?
I also have a problem, if this is going to be considered a new application, then first, everything needs to be complete before we set a public hearing. So we're not setting a public hearing until everything is in, including the landscaping plans. And then secondly, if you are asking us to treat this as a new application, then we may want to do another site walk because it's a new application.
Right.
And so you can't just say without the site walk or anything like that. So it has to be new on both ends. It can't just be new for us and open-minded for us and still say, no, we're not gonna do a site walk, or can we alleviate that kind of stuff? Because if it's a new application, it's a new application.
Because the premise is that you're making significant changes to this that addressed our concerns, so we'd want to go onto the lots and see that. like the question of the space for the walking path, for the houses that are within the 50 feet, all that stuff. I mean, I'd like to see that again. I don't want it just taken, say we're not gonna do it.
If the commission would like to have a site walk, we could certainly have a site walk. I'm just offering it as an opportunity to expedite the process. Should the commission wish to walk the site, we'll make it available, and that's certainly not a
I think
problem.
it's all gonna depend on what you present.
Okay, and the first question is whether or not the application is gonna be accepted. From our perspective, it didn't make sense to get into a detailed presentation simply to repeat it again in a month when the public was here.
Right, and we wouldn't be doing that tonight because the application is not complete. So we would accept the application as is for right now, but it still needs the landscape plans in order to make it complete, and so we won't set the public hearing date until the final application is complete.
Is that the position of the entire commission? I recognize it's yours.
Yeah, I agree. And I'd like to see, truthfully, some type of a document that addressed, that shows side by side, this is what's in the minutes, these are all in the minutes, so this is what we requested, and this is how it was addressed, or if it wasn't. So where we had issues of property on specific lots, because remember, we asked that all the lots be numbered, right? So lot number X was asked to be removed. Our response is, we removed it, or our response is, we combined these properties, or our response is whatever. I'd like to see a side-by-side comparison of what we asked you to do versus, sitting here trying to guess and then going home and spending hours on this with the plans I have sitting on my floor at home, trying to understand what was changed and what wasn't. I think that's part of the due diligence that you need to give us, as to how you address what we asked. As a new application, it is a new application, I understand, but it also is one that we've reviewed. We spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of due diligence, and provided input that we wanted addressed. So I'd like to see a summary as how it was handled.
I understand.
I think that's a legitimate request.
We can provide the information. We can provide the information. There was a disagreement, respectfully, between some of the commission's perspective and position on some of the homes and the applicant's position on some of the homes, and
but that's to be vetted now as a new application.
Which
but
we
because,
will do.
But because they were brought up, right, by Jerry and Ashley and others, myself included, then there should be a summary document outlining, and you just pull it from the minutes. These are the things that were requested.
Yeah, because even
This
if
is
you're
how
not
we
gonna change
handle them.
anything, it should still be
If you're not gonna
addressed.
change it, just put it, we're not gonna change it. But we at least don't make us hunt and peck for it. Put it out there so we can see it.
Understood.
Because that's
Not a
what you're
problem.
that's what you're gonna have us do by handing all of this tonight. Hunt and peck.
Well, sort of. We'd hoped to simply have the application be accepted, okay? Determine whether or not a site walk was gonna be
It's
necessary.
not
Maybe-
for tonight.
Understand. So we'd hope, we're not gonna have you hunt and peck, and the hope wasn't to have you hunt and peck, and the ask wasn't to have you hunt and peck. The ask is to get the application accepted, and then have a determination made as a significant activity, and then move on from there. We seem to have hit a bit of a snag, and it seems like we can't get out of the box and get past position number one, which is to get the application accepted. As I mentioned, it seems to be putting form a little bit over substance. I recognize the road was a little bit rocky before. We're in a much better position in terms of having everything in. We can create the document that you've asked for, and we're simply missing a landscaping plan that we have, but it does need to be updated to reflect some changes as a result of the benefit of a conversation we had with staff. So if the commission is not going to accept it, then we should just make that decision and we should move along. I would ask that the application be accepted.
Well, just to my concerns, and I understand your point, but I think to reiterate what we've been saying, I think the last application, what really got us, in fairness to both sides, because you put a lot of work into it, and so did we, but because things weren't submitted in a timely fashion, it put us, at the end, running out of time and not getting, time enough to, maybe you could have addressed some of the stuff, but we had to make a decision on what we saw at that time.
You're right.
And that was
That's right.
Well, and again, that forced us, again, we had two choices, and I don't want to rehash that, but I'm just saying, and I'm not blaming anyone, but if we don't get we don't wanna start this application already without a timely submission of things. The reason is, it only really hurts you more than anything, because what it does is, we run out of time. If we go through this again and we don't have enough time to make an appropriate decision, you know what's gonna happen. We don't wanna be backed into a corner where we say, geez, we've done a lot of work, and maybe there is some progress gonna be made, but we're out of time. So if we don't have that information now, then we're already one meeting, that is wasted collecting this material. And you're very close, and I believe everything you say. And again, your staff is, Mike and Dave have done an excellent job. I think we've all agreed that. That's not the issue. It's just that this second go-round, to me, it's more important than before that for all parties, that we get the timely submission of data before we start the clock running. Because I think we started early, like, I think it was in July, and again, we don't, we want to hopefully have a better ending this time.
Because in theory, we should be able to fly through this, right? I mean, we did what, two or three site walks? At least two, maybe three.
Yeah.
2 site walks. We spent a lot of hours. I mean, I know these people very well. They do like I do. They read all this stuff. So I don't really need to hear a lot of the stuff again, because I've already read it. And, I lost what I was gonna say, I'm sorry. But I just think it's vital that, to get off on the right foot, that you guys address what was done, so we can move this through quickly, because we don't really need to rehash everything. It should just really be the highlights of what was different.
Yeah, I understand. I'm gonna just give you the bad news. We're gonna have to make a record, so we're gonna go through the plans, but I understand that we can focus on those 9 or so units that are still numbered, okay? So we can identify them a lot quicker and easier than, a good part of the time we spent in the last application. But we are gonna have to at least talk about, for the benefit of the public and the benefit of the record, the
We
entire
understand that.
application.
We understand that. We
And-
understand
and
that.
Just another comment on, in addition to talking about the sidewalks. I don't think anyone here expects to do the exact same sidewalk you did before, because I'm sure a lot of this, I'm gonna make an assumption, a lot of this plan, there are areas that probably aren't gonna be changed. So I personally don't see any reason that we need to have to go through those, but there might be some areas that we're still in contention with, or maybe, or flux, or renegotiate, whatever. We might have to do maybe a site walk to look at those, because maybe,
Yeah,
because
'cause
we may
I
need to
can think
make.
of the one lot in particular that Ashley brought up, that probably would need to be looked at again, assuming that still is on the site.
I mean, my point is that I don't think we're gonna need these, 2-3 weeks, or months, different site walk, but there may be some areas that we wanna redress that maybe, because
Happy
we
to
don't
do
know
it.
what's in this plan. We haven't seen it yet. That's all. I just
Happy to
wanna-
do it, and if I suggested in some way that it was our expectation that we would not do a sidewalk, I didn't mean to express that.
No, I
was just-
understand.
You said, our hope too is that we can move through it faster.
Well, that's my
So
point.
that
We may not need-
that
we
was
may
the
need-
spirit and the intent
We
of
may need a
what I
half-hour
said.
sidewalk. I'm just saying that there may be, but we have to feel comfortable when we, when push comes to shove, and we have to make a vote. Obviously, we wanna be comfortable, all of us, in what we've seen and making
Of course,
decisions. So,
absolutely, yep.
God willing, you'd be able to put a shovel to the ground this spring. Already, how many months have we done this? You said July, so that's 9 months.
it was when it was, right, when the application was first submitted. That's, again, I don't wanna rehash everything, but that probably caused a lot of issues at the time, management, so.
So Carrie, besides the landscape plan, pages 13 through 20, and the drainage report appendix, what else is needed to make the application complete?
Those were the only 2 things that I noticed.
Okay, so the drainage report only had the name and it didn't have any of the data that goes with it.
Yeah, so Kurt has not obviously had a chance to look through
Which is a
everything,
huge
but
thing,
it
because I
was,
need a lot of time to look at that, that's for sure.
unless we're missing something here, Mike, but
Absolutely, okay.
Just for the, hi Jared, just for the record, his hand is really big in the screen. He waved and his hand covered that. For the record, I'm Mike Gott with Summerhill Civil Engineers. 2 things. The only change to the landscape plan, if you remember in the I wasn't gonna talk about the last application, but if you remember, at a match line between two sheets, one or more commissioners picked up that we had a gap. We
Right.
forgot to add some plantings. It's only changed in the landscape plan. What I should have done, I'm kicking myself now, I forgot to ask the landscape architect to I changed all the dates to January 1st because it's a new application. Forgot to ask her to do that. I should have brought the old plans tonight and crossed off the date and wrote in January 1st. I'd ask you, that's all we really need to do. I would ask you to please not deem this incomplete for the lack of the landscape plans, where the only change is the date. We have to change the date. And that gap. If you recall, there was a gap of, I don't know, 50, 60 feet. I don't remember what it was. The drainage report, Kurt and I are meeting next week. The drainage report is gonna change. Kurt has all the appendices and everything he needs. I called Kurt. Kurt was off last week. Monday was Martin Luther King Day. I gave Kurt until noon to kind of catch up. I called him at noon, said, hey, Kurt, can we meet and go over the drainage? Because at the very end of the last application, Kurt asked me to try to take care of some things, and I did. But I want to sit down with him and make sure that I've done it to his satisfaction. So the drainage report is going to change too after I meet with Kurt. I would just ask you, that's all I have to say. I would ask you to please, if
Can I
you
just
could,
ask-
accept the application so we can move forward.
Okay, we're not saying not to move forward. The application that you have submitted to Carrie, we would accept,
Yeah.
except we're not going to schedule a public hearing or anything until it's complete, because that starts, like Steve said, our clock. And then that pigeonholes us into a time
Understood.
limit. And we don't wanna do that this time, because like he said, last time, we got things at the last minute and then
Understood.
had to try to make decisions, and we're not gonna do that this time.
Understood. So the drainage, we really can't do anything about because we have to meet with the town engineer.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And again, I'd ask you to set the public hearing, accept the application, I'm just asking, and set the public hearing, because quite literally, the change to the landscape plan is changing the date to January 1. And
Except for the
filling,
gap.
and filling in the gap. That's the change to the landscape plan. And that's, I would submit that is a minor component of this application, that gap that's missing.
Well, I don't think, and I think, I could, just speaking for myself, but I think we were happy with the landscape plan, and you're willing to address it. We picked up on obvious things, so
Yeah.
to me, that's a done deal. It just needs to be, yeah, obviously the final copy, so I think
Yeah.
we're comfortable with that. You know, the other things we obviously, our issues with, but.
Sorry to take your, I just thought
No,
I should
that's
tell you
fine.
what's,
I
that's what's going on with.
So if we set the public hearing, you're asking us to set the public hearing date tonight?
If you can, we were hoping, we understand it's a new application. I totally understand you don't wanna go back through the whole thing again. But Carrie explained to me, correct me if I'm wrong, unfortunately, like Carrie said, we have to put at least a minimum amount of information in to put it in the record, because it's a brand new application. We'll try.
Oh, no,
You have
we
our
understand.
word.
No,
We'll try
want
not
the
to.
full, we want the
Yeah.
full explanation
Yeah,
when
and
that
not tonight.
time comes.
Not that we were
Right.
planning,
Absolutely.
just like Attorney Porter said, we were just
Mhm.
planning to come tonight, have you accept it, hopefully, deem it significant, because we all know it's significant.
Right, that's kind of.
And we were hoping you'd be able to schedule the public hearing for your next regularly scheduled meeting. Meanwhile, we meet with Kurt Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock, this coming Tuesday morning at 10. We bring in the new landscape plans, and we're on our way.
When you say, this Tuesday coming up?
Kurt and I have a meeting, I
Because-
called him yesterday, we have a meeting next
Okay.
Tuesday.
I just wanna make sure, because again, that, we wanna make sure he has a chance to go through all that information before.
That's why we're meeting.
We haven't decided yet, but I'm just saying, these are
Yeah.
issues that could, you know what I'm saying, that could.
I totally understand, I don't know if you heard, I'll say it again. Kurt was away, good for him, he was on vacation
Oh,
for
no,
a
I'm
week.
not-
And then Monday was
it's not
Martin
for your
Luther
lack
King
of
Day.
effort, but-
So I called him, I even joked when I called him, I said, Kurt, I gave you 4 hours to get caught up, can we meet? So we set our meeting
Well,
for next
that would
Tuesday.
mean the public hearing would start February 26th.
How
Is that the
long
next meeting?
for
That's the next meeting,
notification
and that
period?
means the application dead.
We would be able to, send out the legal notices
Until when?
publish, I'm
14.
sorry.
14 days prior?
So they have to do the mailings, we would have 2 publications in the newspaper a week before and then 14 days prior.
Okay, so me personally, and this has nothing to do with them, they can make up their own minds, I am not comfortable setting a public hearing date for tonight because the application is not complete. But I am willing to allow you as the authorized agent, if the application comes in and they meet with Kurt and Kurt is fine with the drainage report, and so it's a complete application, if it's within the time frame that can still be published and put into the newspaper before the February 26th meeting, I am fine with that. But if it is not complete, if the drainage report is not passed and the landscape plan, including the gap, is not complete, I am not comfortable with setting it yet.
I mean, my concern is,
I agree, that's.
I agree with that too. My concern
makes
is
perfect
Kurt,
sense.
the last time Kurt had a lot of issues.
Mhm.
I'm concerned with his.
And there's really not a lot of time, because February is such a short month. I mean, in your meeting, I think next Tuesday's the 28th, if I'm right, so, you know, and I personally don't wanna get to the meeting, I mean, that's one of the things that set me off tonight, is coming into this meeting and seeing this pack of stuff in front of me, and I didn't get a chance to look at it. You know, I'd like to get the stuff at least a week to 10 days before the meeting too, not the weekend before or the day before, so I can go through it. I mean, I don't like coming to the meetings and not having been able to be prepared for it. So if you can promise that by the 14th of February, you're gonna have everything to us too.
And just bringing it to the meeting tonight was because, quite honestly, it's easier to give it to you as opposed to
No,
trying
I
to
understand,
mail
'cause
all
it's
this
very
stuff. So
expensive.
this was not on the agenda to be discussed as a site plan application.
All right.
It's trying to help them streamline it was the original intent. And so quite honestly, I went through it this afternoon and I was just like, oh my, why is the landscaping plan in here? And I thought we had talked about adding more than just the landscaping that was in the prior application. If that's what you had submitted, then that's what it is. But I thought at the staff meeting, we had talked about addressing some of the issues of that, you know, the houses that are more than 50% of the house within the.
We did.
So I thought that would be reflected, so that's what I was
On the landscape
expecting
plan.
in the landscaping
Yeah.
plan, those boulders that we had talked about, but,
We did, Carrie, Dave and I met for several hours in my office, went through all the comments, and we did set those limits behind the house, and I revised I know, again, I'm sorry, I'm diving into it, but we've revised all those disturbance limits in accordance with Dave's report.
okay, and again, those are getting into the details, which is
Exactly.
fair, so I have not looked at it, I've started to measure a few things, so just to note that I did notice some changes on a few units that they've been shifted over. But I was expecting, again, the landscaping plan to reflect those boulders specifically, which is, again, neither here nor there comparing, you know, the last application to this. It's just not seeing those landscaping plans, I was just kind of floored of like, where are they?
The boulders are something we're gonna have to discuss when we dive into this.
Right, but,
It's not
and so
some-
the concern though is that if we don't have something to start with, then when we go to dive into it, then we're halfway through the process and then we run out of time again, is my concern.
It's my
So-
concern.
My
Yep,
concern, it's
and
my
like
concern
Frank said,
also.
we want it ahead of time and not the night that we get here, cause then we're caught
That's-
off guard.
That's not us. So just to be, for the record, that's not us. So
Except we
I'll
don't
just,
have everything.
Well, again, so this, getting it tonight was not for you to have, it was not with the anticipation that you would have
Reviewed
reviewed it.
everything, yeah.
It's just to show
Yeah,
you that
but to-
here's the application.
But to be in all fairness, the last time we went through this, a lot of times we got things, that night. We got I think we got the wetland report revised a couple of times that night and everything else, and they were handed to us by these gentlemen, so.
So now, yeah.
So, I mean, it's, that, and we understand that, but, I mean, at least this comparison that I'm looking for, I'd like to have that, so I have time to look through it.
we'll do a comparison for you. We'll do that. Dave's report may have addressed that, but we will make sure you have a comparison. So, again, I'm asking again, I I'd ask you to accept the application, let us meet with Kurt, let us change the landscape plan and drop it off, we'll drop it off when we meet with Kurt. Because the changes are literally the dates and filling in the gap.
I mean, the landscape plan, like I said, I think we're okay with it, just, it's
the other one.
drainage, I just wanna make sure Kirk has enough time on Tuesday to review them and, again, not, cause we trust his judgment and.
Right.
Yeah, I'm really
So-
worried about Kurt.
Yeah.
So the
That's
drainage,
me too.
just for the record, and you can ask Kurt this, the drainage report was set during the last application. At the very end, and even after we withdrew, Kurt and I met, and Kurt asked me, and his words were to try to do certain things. You can ask
Okay.
him, Carrie can ask him, and I did.
Need
And
it,
that's,
yes, and that's what Kurt said.
So was it
Yeah,
a
and
massive revision of it?
No,
Or tweaking,
no, that's
more
what I'm.
tweaking? Okay, I'm just
Yeah,
trying to
that's why I
understand.
stood back up again, no.
Okay.
He asked me to try, I'm glad you had that conversation with him. He asked me to try to do some things the best I could. I did, and like I said, I waited till he was back from vacation, and I called him and said, hey, Kurt, I tried, can we meet? Oh, let's go over it. So that's what we're doing Tuesday morning. So it's not a massive revision. He just asked me to tweak some things and try.
Okay.
He asked me to try to knock down the peak rates of discharge in certain areas. I was able to do most of what he asked me.
Okay,
So that's why we're meeting. That's the only reason we're meeting.
so obviously this is an improvement over the previous one, which was, okay. good.
Should be.
Well, I think as Ashley said, the main concern is timing to get this done, because it's really only a few weeks. I think it's 3 weeks, right?
Jerry, do you have anything?
When is it, Joe? The 26th?
No,
It's the 20
it's like I'm having deja vu all over again.
It's the 26th is the meeting date, but I believe you have to get everything out
So
to the press by
February-
the 14th.
So February 5th is when we would have to run the legal notice for it to be published on the 13th and 20th,
So that's
for the
2
meeting on the
weeks.
26th.
So that's 2 weeks.
After meeting with Kurt on Tuesday, we should be able to do that, because there's no other changes.
Well, at least you'll know at that point, which is
And,
your
and
point.
that's why I gave my opinion that tonight I will not, but I personally will give Carrie authority, I don't know what these guys are gonna vote, if she deems the application complete by the time it needs to be published, by all means, accept it and publish it.
Well, that's acceptable to us. I mean, that makes sense.
I just wanted to ask Carrie, is that something that you'd feel comfortable with? Because it sounds reasonable, and actually, I would support that.
So,
you know,
yeah.
Because it gives us some flexibility, but it also, again, we're trying to be
Because
accommodative
if it's
here.
not complete, you can say it's
Right.
not, and we have to
Mhm.
hold off for 1 month.
For
And
the-
then
for the
it means
pub-
Kurt too, I mean.
Right.
Right.
Because Kurt is
And that
usually
gives
the one.
Do you understand what we're saying? If everything is go and everything works out fine, then we could go ahead, but we're gonna leave it up to Carrie to make the decision if everything is complete in a timely fashion in order to get all the necessary documentation and notifications. Is that, I think that's what,
Mhm.
I'm just paraphrasing, sorry, you said it very nicely, I wish I had it recorded.
Is that okay?
Yep, so complete drainage report based on the comments from Kurt,
And the landscape.
And the
And the
landscaping, which sounds, in theory to me.
which I guess
good.
is just submitting what had already been submitted with no
Except for
changes.
they have to
The
fill in the
match
gap.
line,
Right.
yeah,
That gap
but,
again.
right.
So,
With a hard stop of 2/5.
It has to be published by that day,
So you have to have a hard stop before that.
the 4th.
Okay. Hard stop at 2/4.
I would need-
Because you gotta
Motion,
get allowed
yeah.
24
Yeah.
hours, right, to post, to get it into the paper, I think,
So
right,
do
isn't
we
it?
want to propose tonight on whether or not?
I don't
Right,
know.
so can someone craft a motion along those lines?
Okay, so, I move to allow the duly authorized agent of the Inland Wetlands Agency to make the determination of application completeness for the Notch Hill Village Active Lifestyle Community, applicant IWWA number 2020-2, 50 Fowler Road, owner applicant Munger Brook Associates LLC. If the application is complete by February 4th, it can be accepted and published for public hearing. And if not, then it is delayed until it is complete.
I'll second that, but I do have a question. I'll
Yeah.
second it. So, because I don't know how it works for publications, if you have to have it, you said 10 day, it has to be published 10 days before?
So the,
Because I can't believe you can call it in on the 4th,
The 5th.
and it's gonna be on the 5th newspaper,
No,
right?
she calls it in on the 5th.
No,
and
so
it's-
we publish in the Sound, which is a weekly publication, and we need to send it in on a Wednesday for publication the following Thursday. So
And is
we
that-
need
will
to
that
send
get
it
you-
in on the 5th for publication on the 13th, and then the 20th. So we send it in
So
on
there'll
the
be enough
5th,
time?
stating that we'd like
Okay.
it run on the 13th and the 20th.
Okay,
No,
that's what I
I
was
said the
concerned.
4th, so
Yeah.
that she can call
All
it
right.
in on the
Okay.
5th.
Because I was concerned there wasn't enough time. Okay.
Mhm.
So, excuse me, but when do we determine it's a significant activity and
It
so
is.
that a-
Well,
Yeah.
We-
but
We've
that's-
assumed
but
that,
that's-
Jared.
It's a good point, though, because
We have
that,
to make a determination.
a motion.
Say, okay.
Okay.
So I was gonna get to that, but we were
Let's
discussing.
do
So we
this
can
one
do a
first.
second one. We
Let's
can
do
a
this
second one.
motion first.
So you wanna do this motion and finish, cause
All right.
Ashley's.
It was made and
You
seconded.
seconded, okay. So, Jerry, did you hear the motion, the first motion?
I
Okay.
heard the motion.
Okay, so let's vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
I-
Okay.
And then I'll make a motion that,
That we do
the
minutes.
inland application IWA number 2020-2, 50 Fowler Road, owner applicant Munger Brook Associates LLC, is a significant activity and requires a public hearing.
Second.
Okay. Before we vote, is that acceptable then? Do we have to make it a statement other than we already, I mean, the first one we determined it was, so we're just really continuing. Do we have to give any?
Because it's a new
other-
application.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Do we have to give?
Added to the previous motion.
I
How's
would.
that?
So for the benefit of the record, I can explain to you, this is a 91-acre site, falls primarily in an I3 zone. 9.4 acres of disturbance in the upland review area. There will be 5 wetland crossings. 2 of them will be temporary in nature, 3 will be for road improvements. I'm fairly certain, based on that representation, you can comfortably find that this is a significant
It's a
activity.
significant
It's a
activity in the
significant
amount of wetlands affected. I mean, I just wanna make sure we state it, just instead of making a motion without saying it.
Oh, all right, yeah, that's because it's
all.
new, sorry.
I know, I just wanna make sure for the record, we state our reasons.
No, right, that's what, little
Attorney
reasons.
Porter said, yeah, very good, so, okay, so we can
So
finish,
my
sorry.
motion, do I have to restate the
No, no,
motion?
no.
Okay.
Yeah. So you made the motion, did you second it,
Yes.
Ashley? Okay, sorry, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good.
And Jerry did say, I don't know if you heard that, Mary.
I thought he did, right, Jerry?
He did.
Okay.
I saw his big
It was just a
hand.
quiet one.
So, right, so then.
Thank you, and appreciate your help and willingness to work with us.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd like to see it be successful and get this going too,
Yeah.
so
And
it's
and we
not.
Has
wanna
to
make
wait.
sure, again, we just wanna make sure we have enough time to make the right decision. for
Understood
all-
completely.
For you guys, more
Well,
for you than,
I thank you
understand?
for
I
looking
mean,
out for us.
Okay.
Appreciate it, I understand.
Seriously.
And I get it, I appreciate it.
Okay, I just
Thank
want you
you.
to understand why we're, can be.
We understand, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very good.
Thank you, thank you, Karen.
Or otherwise known as Big Hand.
No, thank you.
Okay, then I guess we can move to item B under other business, which is discussion regarding trout in the classroom program.
Bring in a big pool over there,
Yes.
and we get the kids get to fish and catch.
Exactly.
Sounds like fun.
Okay, so this is, I don't know if any of you have heard of this before. Jerry, I'm sorry I didn't forward you this information, but I can send you the link.
Okay.
Let's see, so just pass this down. Show you the brochure, I'll go around the front. So this is, so I had gone to
It's pretty cool.
a talk, I think it was at the Hammonasset Festival. And so here's the brochure. It literally is about raising trout in classrooms. And I found out that North Branford is one of the few towns that does not have this program. So this is sponsored by Trout Unlimited. But I'm bringing it to you all because I wondered if any of you would be interested in working with me to talk with the schools and see who might be a good fit. So I reached out to Scott Schoonmaker, the superintendent, and he thought that it would be a good idea. The cost is kind of nominal. It's, well, relatively. It's around $1,500 for initial outlay, which is, the chiller, I guess, is the most expensive item. It's around $800. And then they also need to provide a 55-gallon tank. So they actually raise the trout in the classrooms. And I'm not sure which
And
school
then
would
release
be
it.
the
Yeah,
best
that's awesome.
fit for this.
We can lease it right down the street there in the
Yeah,
Farm River.
they
Um,
release it, yeah.
But, so Greg Sharp, local resident, had interest in this as well, and
Mhm.
he's a member of Trout Unlimited, so,
He's the one that owns the house by Mill
Yes.
Pond, right?
Yes.
yes, he's
Yeah,
off
the-
of,
by the
yeah,
dam.
right on the Farm River as well.
Right.
So,
I think it's a great idea.
So
It helps.
they'll get released
No,
right
he's
in the
not the
Farm
one that-
River?
I
It's
believe
doing
so,
the-
yes.
the bridge,
Wow.
the
Yeah.
bridge.
Oh, it's the other guy.
Yeah, and so the kids
Sharp used to
learn
come
all
through and
about
sit
the
in
fish,
the
obviously.
Oh, it's a
and
great
the-
connection between fish and the fresh water and environment. Oh, absolutely.
Right. And the website has a great amount of resources, so they even have resources for the teachers, so they can have lesson plans. And then obviously it's really hands-on, so.
You're probably talking more of this taking place next fall then?
Yes, exactly. So they said on the website, the ideal time is like September through the winter, and then I guess releasing them in the spring. I
Right.
don't know the exact
You start
timeline,
with the
but
Friday, after
it
they're
wouldn't be
usually
this
about-
year, because we still have to,
Yeah,
get
before you release
everyone's
them.
support.
Yes, set up in September, get
Oh,
the
there you
eggs
go.
in October,
Right. There
you go.
release in the spring.
Does it say that in here?
Yeah,
Yes,
no,
right
it's
here.
great. No,
Okay.
it lists everything. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I do too.
I do too. I think it could be done in a couple different places, in the elementary school and in the high school, because in the high school science classes, they can definitely do it.
And we're
And how
fortunate
many
we have a-
gallon
we have a
tank
And
did you say it
big
was?
little, the younger kids would love to.
55-gallon
Yeah.
tank.
The younger kids would love
It's a
to
big
feed the fish.
Tank.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll go with you to talk to Scott.
Okay. Okay. Just gonna-
It's kind of hard to do
Fish ladder
during the
going.
day.
Oh, yes.
I see him
Should have
working on it,
printed out
though.
pictures.
It seems to be going well, huh?
I was trying to include you more, Jerry, but I don't know how to really do that. I'm in the circle. So the fish ladder's going very well. I actually went to Lindsay Suter's house,
That's who.
Yeah, I got the name
which
on it.
is
They're on the dam.
incredible. They're right
right-
on the dam. I had never been in there, and
You've never been in the house?
No.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
oh my gosh. So, and he's going to be having an event at some point this early spring, I believe, open to the land trust, and I asked if he would include all of you as well, so.
Oh, absolutely.
I'll
Love to see
forward,
it.
I'll
Cool,
forward that to you.
absolutely. I
I'd
wanna
love
be
to
there.
But
go to
it's
that.
a very intricate fish ladder. Oh my gosh.
And it's installed.
It's in the process.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's, and they're doing all the construction this winter, which he was hoping that it would have been done in the fall or in this.
But there was so much rain.
Right.
summer
They
break.
need low flow,
Yep.
lower flow
Needs to be a
anyway,
lower
yeah.
flow time.
Yeah.
So,
Because
I-
when it floods, it goes past his windows
oh my
in the
gosh.
house.
Yeah.
I always wondered that, cause boy, there's times when it rains and I thought of
That's
him
what
in
goes
there,
past the windows in
it
the
literally.
Yeah. Okay, all right,
Good.
great, thank you. So
great.
that's everything that I had.
All right, Jared?
All right.
So I make a motion to adjourn?
Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right, Jared.
All right, we're gonna be a part of this. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, meeting adjourned.